and then we'll get started with the user activity part of the course. Good morning, Karan.
ट्रेनिंग्स वाले नहीं बहुत टेक्सी के बदमाश है हाँ देख रही हाँ
Good morning.
हाय हाय ठंडा साला दो ठो स्वेटर पहने फिर भी ठंडा लग रहा है यार हरियम नो जवाब बाप रे बाप मरियम
Good morning, everyone. Let's get started. Let's wait for a few more minutes. Good morning. Let me take some feedback. How is the class going? Are you able to follow what I'm teaching with this CRM app? You want something extra? Maybe? Okay. So if you have anything that I can add, that will be a good add-on. Just let me know. Okay. So let's spend some time today talking about some of the concepts that we have seen so far and how they relate to the overall app configuration. Okay. So we have, and I'll draw a mind map for this because I think that will be a good idea. There's something called a CRM app. Okay. And there are different components of this CRM app. I would rather rub it. Sorry. Erase. And just, did I miss anything? No, Aradhya. I was just taking feedback on how the classes are going. And I started talking about the overall structure of the app. Okay. So we have something called a CRM app. And there are different components of this app which have different purposes. There is a concept of separation of concerns. Separation of concerns. According to this concept, imagine you are designing a room. Then every part of the room should have a clear purpose. Then only the design is good. Okay? If you want to design something clean, you have to make things in the proper place. You have to organize them well. What we typically see in software is a top-down approach of designing. So we'll have a CRM app that will be further divided into multiple parts, multiple folders. And each folder is an industry practice. Like people have been using the same folders for all kinds of apps. So they are set in stone. And therefore it is called as a framework. Okay. Framework is this idea that you can relate different things into you can put different things into different buckets and they work out well. So I'm just talking about a framework of how do you structure your code in case of a backend application. So the first thing we have, which is quite interesting, is the controller. What is a controller? Can you tell me? And there is something called as model. There's no view in this. View is just the route. So view is on the front end right now. We have controller and model. Can you tell me what is the difference between controller and model? And can you derive the whole framework from first principles? What do you want to do with all this organizing of the code? Let's discuss these things. Model is a database. That is a close approximation. You can think of it as the DB. You can call it a DB layer. Okay. What is controller? Controller is something that controls the model. Does that definition make sense? controls the model. Something that is going to interact with the model and change it over time. That is your controller. Now, there will be different components of model as we discuss. First is the user component that we have been discussing so far. Question, give response to client. Controller, that is also a good idea. Controller handles the request. But controller you can think of like something that sits between the client and the model. Suppose model is here and client is here, then controller is the closest piece of software that sits closer to the model. Okay. What other things come between between client and controller? So think about this area. What will you put here? Okay. And then DB can also be a ticket. We will have a ticket data. We will have ticket collection also. So I'll discuss that in a few minutes. But what else sit between client and controller? Can you tell me? What else can sit between client and controller? View, you can think of view as the client itself. We don't have a special view. Middleware, that is a good idea. Then there is an optional middleware layer between controller and client. And the idea between this is before query goes to the controller should receive a complete query. Okay, and it should get a request body basically. Now, middleware is going to do some things which is common across multiple controllers. How do I put it? Let me just take another page. Suppose you have 5 controllers. Controller 1, controller 2. They have their specific request response pairs. You understand this part? You have 4 controllers with their own request and response pairs. Now, there can be services which multiple controllers might be wanting to use. For example, verify ticket. Imagine you are living in imagine there is a big company and there are different rooms that some visitor can go to in the company. But there will be one service that all the rooms will be using, which is a security guard. Okay. Everyone who enters the building, no matter where he goes, he has to go through a security guard. There may be multiple doors for the visitor to enter, but all of them will have security guards. So it doesn't make sense in a company to have a single security guard for every room. Like suppose I am managing operations or marketing, and it will not make sense to me that I manage my own security guard. I would rather want a security service which is going to manage security for all the rooms. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? You will have another security service which is going to manage the security for the whole building. No matter who needs the security, he has to go to that person. It doesn't make sense to have your own security guard all the times. Similarly, verify ticket is a middleware which is basically going to provide services for multiple controllers. There is some functionality that is common across controllers, and then you don't want to write that functionality into each one of them. So what you do is you abstract it out into a middleware. Are we clear till this point? Gauri, are you in the class? You seem to be quiet these days. Nitish, Nayan. Okay. So that's one. So controller model middleware. Middleware. Middleware provides common services services to controllers. What else do you have in the model? What else do you have in the application? And try to derive. So I want to spend some time. I wish I would have done this in a class where more students were there, but I mean, those of you who are here can benefit from this. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to derive this framework which we have created from some first principles. Okay, I want to derive this framework from some first principle, so you understand why we are running this framework on our computer. Okay. Maybe on Monday again I'll reiterate over this framework because there will be 20 odd students more joining. But what else do you have in your application? Routes. Exactly. So routes. And can Ekta tell us what is the route and where does it sit? It sits between client and controller. That is correct. So it sits here. It sits between client and middleware. Okay. And how does this work? Let's go back to our analogy of a building. So when you have an office building, you would want different routes for going to different places in the building. You know, you enter from this gate and or there will be 4 gates and there will be 4 paths that you can take. And these paths will dictate where the security guard will stand, where the rooms are. And if somebody comes with a request, what is the best place, what is the best route he has to take? Ideally, everyone who is entering the building, the goal is he should be able to reach wherever his destination is. That is the importance of a route. Okay. What is the use of a route if you cannot reach to your destination? Suppose you are starting in Hyderabad and you want to go to Delhi. What is the use of a road if it does not lead you to Delhi, if it stops in the middle? Suppose you come to a dead end and you cannot reach Delhi. So that's not a good idea. So again, just like you have these paths in the building from moving from one place to another, you have routes in your application which dictates how the requests are traveling through the application. Okay. So the request will start at the client and client will hit a proper URL. Okay. And so imagine you have a building called as localhost colon 3000. This is the building that you have. And this building will have multiple doors that you can enter from into the building. And depending on which gate you are taking, for example, there are different gates for different people. The service worker or the housekeeping will take a different route to the building. There will be a different route for the VIPs. There will be a different route for the... So if you go to an airport, there will be a different route for the international flights. There will be a different route for the staff people. There will be a different route for the domestic flights, and so on and so forth. If a VIP comes, they have a different route that they take. Okay? So I'm talking about airport. There will be different routes or different gates this API will open up. For example, there can be CRM API / CRM API / user. Now all the requests to user database will come from here. Okay, then user controller will come from here. API authentication, all the requests related to authentication will come through this gate. Okay, and then you map this gate, you map the whole journey of this gate from the middleware to the controller and see how that request goes. And then the route that you take to reach the model is the same route that you take back to come back to the client. So model will give you a response that will go to the controller, that will go to the middleware, and that will go again back to the client. Okay, so that is the purpose of routes. Now so these are the key components of your CRM app. Helps in routing and directing the request. Now there is one more. There are a few more components. Can you tell me what are they? We have discussed model, middleware, routes, and what else is there? There is something called as config. Config, can you tell us, Sasan, what is config doing here? Sasan Kumar. Am I pronouncing your name correctly, Kumar? Sasan. Okay, Sasan, what is the config file doing? Can you tell me why do you need a config file? Why can't you just put it everywhere? Why do we need a config file? To reuse frequently used variables, hide some information. That is a good idea. Config is for hiding some information, and it is also like, think of it like this. You have a single place from where you can change the configuration of the building. Okay. For example, there is an electricity plug in the office building, or there's an electricity supply from the office building. All the important electricity supply will be sitting there. There will not be important plugs all over the building. The important plugs will be in an electricity room, maintenance room, and some guard will come and deal with it. Okay, so that's the design that we keep in config. So it is basically configurations of our app. If you want to change tomorrow, if you want to change the DB tomorrow, we don't want to go at 10 places in our application and change the DB. We just want one place where we say, okay, now the DB is different and everything works as well. So this is just the configuration of the whole app. And there's one last thing that we have, which is called as utils. Utils is like your washrooms in the building. Every washroom in a office building or in a mall, if you go to, will be exactly same. Okay, exactly same, and many people will be using the washroom. So you will have a different service or different bunch of people who will be managing washrooms. It will not happen that the operations teams will manage washroom for itself and marketing team will manage the washroom for itself. There will be a housekeeping service which will take care of the washrooms. Similarly, there will be utils which will contain all the constants like washrooms or recently what happened in Corona that most of the office buildings, I'm talking about big office buildings have their own, what is it called? Hand sanitizers. There were places all over the building, there were hand sanitizer put. Okay. Now you need common hand sanitizer all over the place. So you will have a single person who will manage all the hand sanitizers in the building. Now what will happen if he decides to change the hand sanitizers? Only this person you have to tell that please change the hand sanitizers, and all the hand sanitizers in the building will be changed. So all those kinds of things will be stored in the utils. And this is the overall structure of our CRM app. If you understand this framework of solving problems, then it will be much easier for you to reason about why your code is not working. There will be places where your code will not working, and if you can derive this structure from first principles, you will be able to understand why it is not working. Or if somebody else gives you a new application, these structures are so common that you will be able to clearly reason about the application from these principles. Okay? Any questions? Utility is also a module basically. Utility will have constants and mostly constants and some object converters, something like utilities. Just like you have utilities in buildings, you will have utilities in the application. So that's the overall structure I wanted to spend some time on. You will see people who can code up a whole website, a large scale website in 3 hours. Less than 3 hours, they will create the whole website for you. And the way they do it is basically to have these frameworks boiled down in them. So whenever a new application comes, they can easily easily go to the framework and code it up. Like they will code it up so fast that you will think that they are not even thinking about it. But everything becomes muscle memory for them. Anyways, what type of tasks we do what type of tasks can we do help of utility? Utility, we can do all the tasks. It is like a single place where you have constants and different kinds of simple functions that you want to use. Okay, suppose somebody wants to use a washroom in a building, or somebody wants to use a hand sanitizer. Then there should be a single person who is responsible for all the hand sanitizers in the building. Okay, so if you go to a mall or some shopping mall, a big shopping mall which is well managed, you will see that every bathroom is standardized. You will not have differences between the bathrooms. Every bathroom will have same soap, same kind of structure, same kind of processes that they use to solve it. So that utility is there. That's why we have utilities here. It is like the maintenance of rest of the things. Okay, so those are the key parts of your CRM app. Okay. Whenever you think about utilities, try to think about toilets, and then it will make sense to you what they are doing. They are not solving any business problem, but they are serving all other businesses in a manner which is not common. You don't know when people will go and have a washroom break, but whenever they want to do, they should have a single place or single type of place there where they can go. Like data formatting, file handling, and log management. Yeah, that is possible with util. You can have a log file which can be used across multiple functionalities. You should have a logger that is going to give you the errors that you want to generate. And you can also have data formatting. Whenever data comes in, you can have a data formatting in the utils. Yeah, so all that is possible. Thank you, Ravindra. Now let's do the user activity part of the application. What are we going to do in the user activity? We are going to define 3 functions. User activity controller. I'm calling it user controller.js. And there will be 3 things that we will be doing with this user controller. First is find all. Second is find by ID. And third will be update. Those are the three. Those are the three functions that we have in our controller. Now, what is common across all three of them? Can you tell me? Who can perform these three functions? Find all. Do you understand what these are? Update is going to update a user. Find all is going to return all users. Return all users. Find by ID is going to find a user by ID. Find a user by ID. And update is going to update a particular user data. What is a typical kind of update that we want to do in our application? Or what is kind of the requirement update that we have? What is given in the requirements, if you remember? What is the kind of update that you can do? Update the user info. No, we are not going to provide updating the ID. ID cannot be updated. Ticket status is not something we update in the user controller. It is something we can do. Hariharan is correct. The typical use case here is to update the user status. User status is going to be updated in the update functionality of the application of this user controller. Okay. So why don't we write these controllers and see how they work? Are you ready for some code? And before doing that, I'll again create a new folder because I think that is something that is going to help you a lot. You can think of the application across time. So, I'll just come here and start a open a folder, go to Relevel, go to CRM app. Just give me 1 second. CRM app. Inside this, I'll copy this folder and I'm going to paste it again. It will take some time. Hang on for that. And this folder I'm going to call let me rename this 8 dot building the CRM app user activity, and the date is 24th of December 2022. Enter. Okay. So this is good. Now let me open the folder. Let me close all the editors that are open. I don't like them. 7 is done. Now we are at 8. I'm going to commit something because I think commit is important. What am I sharing right now? Were you able to see the? Are you able to see my? Are you able to see the image of me? Can you see my video? In the screen sharing, yes. Then it is correct. I don't want to see it. Now I want to open.
बाप रे बाप, ठंडा रे मरिया.
Just give me 1
कंबल
second.
ढका है फिर भी नहीं सहा रहा.
GitHub desktop.
कंबल ढका है फिर भी नहीं सहा रहा है.
In GitHub desktop, I'm going to started.
तुमने नींद आई है?
Lecture.
फलने नहीं नींद आई है. सुतो
To main
4 बजे 5 बजे उठाएंगे तुमको आज नहीं उठिए तो मैं आज करूँ
and push origin. Now, in this, I'm going to define another controller. I'm going to come to controller, and I'm going to do
मनीष को रहती है ना
dot
इसका टोपी मनीष का लो
controller dot js. Okay. And in this controller, I'll have 3 functions: exports dot find all. It will be something like a async function that takes request and response.
मर भावा
And
के
then it
बनवाए
does
क्या
something.
तनिका
कब बनवाएंगे
That's one. And all. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Aryan. Then there will be another one, which is exports. Is the size of the application? Is the size of the window okay to you? Do you want me to zoom a little or something? Just let me know. It is okay. Okay. Fine. Okay. Find by ID. This will be async
ढापो ही
request comma response. Going to something like this. And then there will be a final one, which is exports dot update. This is also an async function from request to response. Going to this. These are the 3 functions that we want to write. Let me write down some data about this. I think that is going to help you. Some blob of text. Controllers for the user resources. Controllers for the user resources. Only the user of type admin should be able to perform the operations defined in the user controller. Okay. What are these operations? First is I don't like this params thing. This is going to fetch the list of all users. Okay. This, how do you write this one? There will be different operations that we need to do. User.find. Yeah. Okay. So there's one very simple way of writing it, which is to just find all the users, which is going to be try users is equal to await user dot find.
नहीं कहिया
नहीं रे
मोबाइल जोड़े खाएगा वो फोला है
Find
कौन है तो
and then if there is an error, catch error. Const missing. Yeah, sure. I don't want to do it here. I'll just do it outside. I'll tell you why I want to do it outside. Catch error. If there is an error, then you are going to do console.log console.error error while fetching the users, and response.status 500.send send this message. Message is going to be some internal error occurred.
बड़ा पढ़ा थी
As this is done, we are going to do something. If this is not a catch block, then we are going to do
बड़ा पढ़ा थोड़े
response.status
लेस रहा है
100. It is up. Sir, import. I'm going to import the modules. Just give me a few minutes. And send.
जोड़े जान राइट आई होई
नहीं है
We are going to send the user object, users object, but we are going to perform some operations. So I'm going to write it like this for the timing. And now there are what else? What are the things that I need to import?
बक्सा में है
What is the problem with this guy? Must be okay. This should be let. Should be let, and this user guy should be no. Just come here and do const user is equal to require dot slash model slash user model. Okay.
किसकी बुताई रे
We have imported things.
ड्राइवर ने की
Now,
करने रे बैटरी खत्म हो गई
now comes the interesting part,
अरे वो छोना अरे वो छोना रे
which is how do you convert a list of users into something
कहाँ कौन हंसे
interesting. You want a function that can convert your user into a response. And let me write that function. Object converter.
उठो
Converter. And I'm going to send the user object here, and it will be converted into a list of users. So let me write this object converter right now, and then I'll discuss something with you. Const object converter. It takes a list of users, and what it does, it sends you whatever you can reply. So it will take users, and then it is going to reply with user let users result be a list of users. Users dot for each. Go to each of the users.
बस हम नहीं जाएंगे
Users dot for each user for each element. What you're going to do, user result dot push. And these are the following things. You don't want to push the password of any user. So you will push the name is equal to user dot name. User dot no. I have to define here. User for each user you are going to push user dot name. You'll have user ID being pushed at user dot user ID. Other than that, you'll have email, which is pushed at user dot email. You will have user type. User type is equal to user dot user type, and you'll have user status. Status, which is going to be user
जल्दी जल्दी ढका यार
user
ठंडा लग रहा है
status. And once you push everything, you can return the user result. That's all there is to the object converter. Save this. And now, here is the question that I have for
उधर
you.
मुड़ रहा हूँ
Is the controller file the right place to write this object converter?
आगे थोड़ा सा
What do you think?
तो क्यों मैं जाना थे
Is the controller file the right place to write this converter? Yeah, converter.
मोबाइल को
Parag says
खिलाएंगे
no,
रे
Karan says no,
नहीं
Raj
इधर
says
मुड़ा
no. And why is that? So why do you think this is not the right place for this converter?
ठीक है
तो ठीक है
निंदा 5 ना है
Because my controller should only contain the controllers for my file. It should not have all this logic about converting an object. This is a logic that you will use across multiple applications. So what typically you want to do is you want to cut it from here, define a new file inside which folder. Which folder will you define a file where you will keep this object converter? No, not middleware, utils. You will create inside utils a file called as object converter, object converter.js, and inside this you will paste this folder file. And now what you can do is instead of calling this object converter, because the name of the file is object converter, you can call it exports dot user response. Okay. Now the given a list of users, it is going to give you the response. But this comes under logic part, so it comes under logic part, but it is not exactly the logic. It is a logic that will be used across multiple converters, Aradhya. Okay, it is like a utility logic. Even the constants come under the logic of the folder, but these are used across multiple controllers. It is not something that only user controller will use. There can be other controllers which want to return the list of users. For example, there can be a ticket controller that wants to return the list of users. Then for that ticket controller, you will have the same user response or object converter that you will need. Okay. So whenever you understand the use case of this object. You are taking an object from the model and sending it back to the user, and you want some functionality for that. So it's a good idea to keep that separate from your controller logic. So that's why I'm keeping it here. Now the user controller. So instead of calling this, I'm going to call it as, or I'm going to first import const object converter, which is going to require something called as utils slash object converter. Once you have the object converter here, user controller. Once you have the object converter, you can directly do object converter dot user response of users. In utils, how users will be fetched, we need to import user model there. No, since you are sending the users, you don't have to import the user model. You import the user model only in the case where you define a new user. Here we are directly using user as just a JSON file. You can think of it as an object that is already created. If I were doing something like user dot a new user or something like, if I was creating a new user, then I'll need the user model. Okay, so now we have our find all logic, but this is to get all the users. There can be other logics that we need to write, and let me write that. So now there can be other logics depending on the request. What kind of search queries do you want to support with a find all operation? Do you want to? Sir, my question. Suraj, repeat why create object convert. Why create object convert? I don't understand. Why do you want to create object converter? Oh yeah, we are creating object converter because we are going to use it across multiple controllers. We are going to use it across multiple controllers, and it's a good idea to keep that code separate from the controller. It is like a utility that we want to keep separate from the controller. Okay, does that make sense, Suraj? We are going to use it across all four controllers. This controller, find all, find by ID, update, find by ID, find all, both of them we are going to use. Does that make sense, Suraj? Yeah. So therefore we are separating it. Yeah. Now I don't like this bunch of code here. So let me modularize this code. Uh, so what I'm going to do is okay. So now I'm going to modularize this code and I'm going to put it inside a function. I'll call that function as fetch all. Relax. I'm going to do users is equal to await fetch all, and that's all. Now I'm going to define a function called as fetch all. Const fetch all. Now this is an important point. Then now many of you might be thinking, why don't we put this function inside the converter and inside the utils? Yeah. No, you don't need to send a user for fetch all. You just fetch everything. Okay. So what you need? Oh, users. You have to call it users. Users dot is equal to fetch all, and this is the function, which is a simple function. It goes from nothing. It takes nothing as input, and it replies with as this thing, and it is let users is await user dot find. Once await happens, it is going to return users. Okay. This is fetch all function. This is one kind of find operation that you can perform on your data. There are different kinds of find operations that you can perform, but this is one of them. Now what I'm going to do is I'll have to send the response. Just give me 1 second. I need the response variable. So fetch all response. Result is not needed. So yeah, good. Now one thing I can do is I can stop here and then get this find all operation working. Let's look at the postman and see if this is working out. Okay. So I'll just go to routes and I'll go to user routes, and in this user routes I'm going to say I have users, and for this I'm going to write first I need the user converter. So take this and call this as const user controller is equal to require not controllers / user controller. Now I'm going to come here and have this in the next line, and in the next line I'll have user controller dot find all. Okay. Now I'm going to save this, and I need to log in since I logged in last night, so I don't have to log in. But let's see. I'll have to log in as the admin, and then fetch the values. User is missing. Okay, so now I'm going to go to Postman. Postman. Hmm. So I copy this from here and put it here. Okay. Now this is the user's request. In its header, I have the access token of the admin. And if I just come here and send it, I have to start so I'll come here and start the app. Now I have to go to CD, date, building CRM app, user activity. I come here and do node space app.js and admin got present. Now since admin is present, I should be able to access all the users from there. Now I come here and send this. Requires admin role. Okay, so maybe check this one. Header. Send this. Requires admin role. Okay, let me go to the admin sign in. The body contains admin and this. Let me send this. I have signed in and this is my access token. Once I take this access token, Control C, go to this access token, Control A, Control V. Now the access token is returned. Now I can just do send. And I got the list of all the users. You see, I got the list of all the users. Very simple. Once you understand the framework, it is not a difficult thing. Now, let's move forward. Now, what we want to do next is there only one user in DB, right? There are two users, you can see them. There are two users in the, one is the admin Anshul and second is the customer Anshul, Arnav. These are the two users. Right now, there are two users. Now, let's talk about this concept called as functional decomposition. And this is one kind of fetch that you can perform on your data. But there are other fetches that you can also perform. Okay? What are those kinds of fetches that you can perform? Can you give me some ideas like what all kinds of fetch that the admin will require? One is to fetch all the users, but sometimes the admin don't want to fetch all the users. It wants to fetch particular users. You see, sometimes you do search queries on created today. That can be a good idea. Yeah, that can be a good idea. We'll see some of them. Yeah. What else you can see? We should be able to search based on the status of the users. Suppose admin is there and he wants to find particular status. We should be able to search for a particular status. We should be search for a particular type. What are all the engineers in the system? What are all the admins in the system? And we should be also able to search based on the name. If I give you the name of a person, you should be able to search him on the database. So those are the three. Based on user ID, we will do in find by ID. When we do find by ID, we'll search for a particular user using the user ID. I don't want to do it here. This is like a wholesale search based on some query. Okay. Now, I'm going to talk about something now. Let me see the time right now. Okay, I have 15 minutes, so I'll just complete this find all, and then once we come back, we'll complete the other two functions, update and find by ID. Okay. So there are three parameters that I'm looking for. One is the user, of course. One is the users. Second is let user type request. What is the user type request? It is request dot query dot user type. Why am I writing like this? Why cannot I just write request dot body dot user type? Why am I writing it as query dot user type? Let user status request. We will pass it in the URL, the query. Yeah, but why? Why do you want to pass it? Why don't you send it in the body? Why are you passing it as the query in there? Why can't I do request.body to get this thing? Forget we are unable to pass. That is true. Let me see if we are able to pass and get. I'm not sure. But much more important point is, suppose this is a gate, then we can pass a body. That's not a problem. We can send a body in the get operation. That is not a problem. The key point is there is an intention behind the query. Query says that I'm going to use the query for a particular purpose. I'm going to find something in my database. That is true. That is, we want to reduce the overhead. But much more important point here is that we want to be clear in our intentions. We should not have hidden intentions. And the clarity of intention is, when I say query, I'm talking about something which is going to be found from the database. So it is similar to the query that you send for SQL. SQL queries, when you send it in the query parameter. So there's a different acting as a filter. Acting as a filter is a good idea. Yeah, correct. That's a very good way of putting it. Query is what puts a filter on your find operation, get operation. Okay, so always use query when you want to fetch something important. Fetch something like where condition. Yes, like where condition. This is exactly the where condition. Where name is this, where type is this, or where user status is follows. So these are the three types of queries that you can have. And depending on what all user has passed, you can decide what you are going to do. So if username request, if the username is given, then you can do users is equal to await fetch by username. Fetch by name, I'll just write it as name. And I'll send user name request. This is one function that I have to write. If username is not given, then what else can be given? If the user type user type is given and user status is given, then you are going to do users is equal to await fetch by type and status. So you'll send user request status. You'll send type first, user type, and you'll send user status. User status request. And always you have to send the response so that you can do the catch block response. Okay, this is the second type of function that you can write. Then there can also be other functions where only the status or only the type is given. So else if only user type request is given. If only user type request is given, then you can do users is equal to await fetch by, and here you are going to send user type request comma response. There will also be else if user else if user. What is the fourth one you can write here? You have done username, you have done user type and user status, you have done user type alone. What is the fourth you can have? Can you see the pattern here? There will be fourth one. I'm going to talk about this. And then, yes, else if there is nothing given, you can send the last one, which is fetch everything if nothing is given out of these. So this is based on the query that you need. Okay. Now here you can have user status request, and here you can do users is equal to await fetch by status. You can send user status request comma response. Okay, so those are the functions that you have. No, this is not from where response comes. Response is here. The response is here. Vivek, why are you so late to the class? I have discussed something very important. Now it will not make sense to you. Yeah, response is coming from here. So these are all the patterns that we have. I have discussed fetch all with you. I'm going to do other fetch operations and your internet connection problem. Why don't you do something about your internet, Vivek? What is the problem? Are you staying in a very small town or something? Do me a favor. Next time, before coming to the Monday's class, watch the recording for this lecture. It will help you a lot in understanding what is going on in the class. Okay. So make sure you go home. Whenever you have time, watch the lecture for today's class. I have discussed something important. I discussed architecture of the whole app today. And then I started discussing this. Can you explain this function? Find all in detail. Yes, I'm going to discuss. Don't worry about this fetch by name, fetch by. I hope you understand how these 5 functions will work, Nayan. Fetch by name and status, fetch by type, fetch by status, fetch all. Do you understand these functions? You can write them. Okay. So basically, what this is doing is it is looking at 3 things. If the query contains fetch is mongoose method, no, fetch is the method that I'm writing here. Fetch is like this method I'm writing. Fetch all is the method that I've written, which is going to call the model in turn. Okay, it is going to call the model and get the data. I could have written this code inside this function, but then this function will be like 100 lines long and you will not understand anything about it. But right now it's very simple function. It says, if you give me the name, I'm going to fetch the person by the name. If you give me the type and the status, I'm going to pass those type and status and fetch the person. If you give me just type, I'm going to find all the people with that type. If you give me status, I'm going to find all the people with that status. Otherwise, I'm going to find all the people that are there in the database. You see that? Oh, Nayan, do you see that? Yes. Okay. So I have 4 or 5 minutes. Let me write few of these functions. I'm going to paste a lot of code in them because I think they are very intuitive. Shouldn't we check second condition first? I think if name is given, then priority should be on the name. Your mileage might differ on this, but for me, name is a much shorter category. If somebody gives you the name, then he mean business. Okay. So name is the smallest category. Then you have name and status. Both of them are a little bigger category. Then type is a little bigger, and then the status is the biggest of them. So therefore, I'm doing it like this. Okay. So now we have fetch all. We can have const fetch by name. This is going to be a async function which will ask for the name and the response. Okay. Uh, Given a name, find the users with that name. So I'm going to define let users, and then I'm going to paste some code, which is, this code is not doing anything. It is, let me write this name as user name request. Okay. So it will find anyone whose username is the given username. And if it is giving an error, it will give an error. Otherwise, it will return the users. Okay. Return users. Is this function making sense to you that I have pasted? I don't want to write the same code, so I have pasted it. Yeah. Vivek, just sit tight for a few minutes, and maybe after the break, when I start the next functions, it will start making sense to you. I know many of the things are not making sense to you right now. I mean, this should not be making sense because we have discussed a lot of theory before. But just give me some time. Once we are back from the break, I'll start on a new function, and I'll probably give you an introduction one more time, and that is going to make it easier for you. In this, I'll have user type request and user status request and response, and this will also be let users, and then there will be a try block, which is again very similar to the previous try block, but there will be some changes in the catch block, uh, and then you write that some internal, you are always saying some internal error occurred, but on the console you are writing that these status and these people are, I'm not able to fetch, and then you can return users, and this is user status. Okay, just give me 1 second. Uh, this should be equal, and there should be arrow here. We need to write async. That is correct. Async. Yeah, sure. So async fetch this. There will also be const fetch by type. It is going to be async. This will take user type request, and it will have a response. All you need to do is uh, there will be a type request that you will have, which is again the same. Can you see? Can you see what part of this will change? Out of these two lines, which line will stay and which line will go? When you are talking about the type part, the status will be removed. You will only have the type. So let users, and then you'll have this, and then we'll return users. Okay. So this is async find user type, and then there will be one more function which will be const fetch by status, which will be async, and it will take user status request. It will have a response. It will have an arrow function, and let me copy this code as well. Control C. If I would have written all this code in that bigger function, many of you would have cried the tears of blood. But now that is simple. You understand what each function is doing. Why are we writing this long code? Satyendra, because we want to have proper error logging on our function, on our, we are writing this long code because we want to have proper error logging and proper status send back to the thing. Let me share my code. Okay, please share, Satyendra. I think if you have written a shorter code, that will be better. But yeah. I'm waiting for Sten to share his code. So this is how you can write the find all function, and I'm going to commit this changes by the time Satyendra is sending his code. Added find all control. Okay. So I'm going to commit this change, and let me see what Satyendra has asked. Pointed out, pick this out, answer that out, and stop sharing. And let me do zoom in on this. Request.query. No, Satyendra. There are a couple of problems with this code. I mean, it's good, but the problem is, for example, there are a bunch of problems. Let me. It will. No, we need to object converter. It will handle. Yeah. So, for example, in your code, you are sending the user passwords along with the users. First of all, that. So then, can you see that when somebody asks for a user, admin will have access to the user password suddenly. Do you see that? So then, with this code, admin will have access to the user passwords. See line 11. Line 11. Okay, you are removing the password. Okay, that's okay. Sorry. Okay, that is there. And also, you are not giving the exact query errors. So, for example, if there was an error for a particular use case, you are not giving that. Okay. So those are a couple of problems with this code. It might work, but people can send all kinds of queries now. They can send a query where they are looking for all the users which are created today. I mean, you don't want to expose that much functionality on your data set. That is another thing that is wrong with this design. It opens up the gateway for any query that you want to send. That might be something you might be asking for, but our test case asks for particular queries and we want to do particular solutions for them. Most of the code is written so that you have better return. This is protected to admin, right? But admin is also not the owner of the whole database. Okay, you want to allow only so the function that you have in this design is need to know basis. Everyone should, even if he is admin, he should know. So there's something called as need to know. You need to give as little access to somebody, no matter how big that person is, how much trust you have in that person. You want to give as little access to that person as possible. Okay, therefore you don't allow a random query to be run on your data set from the admin. But if there are 10 query parameters, how many functions will, I mean, that is the whole point, Satyendra. That is the whole point. We are not going to allow the admin to have random queries. He will not be having thousands of queries on our database. That is the functionality. Because what if the admin doesn't know about DynamoDB and he runs a query because he has the power, he runs a query that stops your production data set, database itself. It can easily happen that the production load can be increased by a random query. Suppose I write a query which is not properly indexed, then the whole production database can be down for a few minutes or a few hours if that's the case. Okay, you want a lot of control on your database. You can write this code, but you want a lot of control over your database. You don't want to expose your database to anyone outside the person who is developing the software. Okay, so therefore, and also the other thing is, you want to write proper error messages for each of the query, so you have easier time debugging the code. If tomorrow there is a problem in the code, you should have an idea about what was the query about, what were the two parameters which it hit, and which function it was going through. If you just directly expose the DynamoDB to the admin, you will not be having access to that part of the problem. Okay. So, anyways, that's a very good question. I liked it, Satyendra, but I think my point is clear now. Okay, so now we'll take a short break. We'll come back at 41, 11:41, 11:41 p.m. We'll come back and see you till then. Okay, break till 11:41. I'm going to mute.